Good morning. I'd like to call the South Sound 911 Board of Directors meeting of October 15th to order. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Board Member Branstetter.
Here.
Board Member Bushnell.
Present.
Board Member Casebolt.
Present on Zoom.
Board Member Denson. Here. Board Member Holm.
Here.
Board Member Hubler.
Here.
Board Member Holsey.
Here.
Board Member Mello.
Here.
Board Member Rumbaugh. Here. Vice Chair McGilligan.
Here.
And Chair Dorr.
By myself.
Put all up for you.
I'm in school. Right, clerk, did we have anybody sign up for public comment before the meeting?
No requests were received.
And nobody this morning?
None today.
Thank you. Next is approval of the agenda. Entertain a motion?
So move to approve the agenda as presented.
Discussion? Moved and seconded. All those in favor, please, signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay. So at this time, the Board of Directors will be entering executive session. The purpose of the executive session is to discuss with legal counsel representing the agency potential litigation to which the agency, the governing body, or a member acting in an official capacity is or likely to become a party when public knowledge regarding the discussion is likely to result in an adverse legal or financial consequence to the agency. RCW 42.30.110(1)I. The executive session will end at 9:17 unless extended by further announcement of the presiding officer. The board is not expected to take further action following the executive session. So the board will be leaving. Everybody else is welcome to stay. We'll come back.
I'm sure.
So
Board members, if we can start, we'll head upstairs to the conference.
before we move,
Oh,
We have some alternates here. Are they allowed to go to that meeting too or not?
The typical procedure is
No.
only one representative
Got
per
it.
jurisdiction.
Okay,
Yep.
thank you. I tried. Yeah, it's just self.
Sorry about that, sir.
I think that was. Go there. Four fence goes. No. I have that for you. Out the actually, just for us that. Trying to even trick. Oh. Right. How this is.
We're back in session. Next is the consent agenda. Will the clerk please read the consent agenda?
Item number 1, approval of the minutes of the September 17th, 2025 Board of Directors meeting. Item number 2, motion 2025-39, approval of a COLA for non-represented employees. And item number 3, motion 2025-40, to authorize execution of a contract amendment to and payment to Comtech Solacom Technologies Incorporated, a subsidiary of Comtech Telecommunications Corporation, for the Solacom Guardian 911 call handling system, annual service and maintenance in an amount not to exceed $148,610 plus any applicable taxes.
Any item on the consent agenda that a member would like further discussion? We have a motion.
Madam Chair, I move to approve the consent agenda as presented.
All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Opposed? Consent agenda is approved. Moving on to radio study session.
So good morning. Happy October 15. I'm glad all of you showed up to celebrate my younger brother's birthday. Appreciate it. He's well into his 50s as well. I'm glad all of you came to talk about radio or listen to our discussion on radio today. This is anybody that's been involved in this organization either at its inception or more recently understands to some degree that there's an issue with radio. And one thing I wanted to do is remind us that none of the folks that are currently on the board of directors created the problem. Most of us did not in this room at all. Some of us were present when it happened and are deeply frustrated, but none of us did it. Most of us are coming to this situation maybe a decade later, learning about it, recognizing that it's an extraordinarily tough situation. So I want to give you a couple of touch points on time, just so you get a sense of the board involvement. Chair Dorr, who has been here the longest, she's in her 10th year, 10th year. Vice Chair McElligott and Commissioner Holm, 5-6 years on the board. And then just to illustrate many of our other additional members, Councilmember Bushnell, Councilmember Halsey, Councilmember Rumbaugh, Councilmember Denson, Commissioner Casebolt, Executive Mello, Councilmember Hubler. All of those folks are 3-ish years or less on the board. So for everybody, just a reminder, none of these folks created this problem. They are only coming here to address it in a responsible way. That also suggests that a lot of the folks that are newer probably don't know the entire history. And we're going to talk a little bit about the history today. I am not intending to cover the entire history. It's more than a decade's worth of history. But why are we going to talk about history? Why are we going to talk about notable events? That's simply to frame the conversation, important conversations that are going to come up in the next several months. I recognize, and those who have been here over the years recognize there have been some extraordinarily tough revenue battles over the sales tax revenue and 911 excise tax. That's not surprising, that happens, but the battles have occurred And in many ways, the positions here from the various jurisdictions could almost be characterized as sort of a war council mentality. But if we stay in the war council mentality and stay positional, we will not move forward as a county. I'm not pitching that, just telling you the outcome. So the landscape is changing. We have new board members. We're turning the corner on another year, but probably the most important event or activity that's occurring right now that could get us anywhere to a unified or single system is the radio owners group who are working internally to advance a unified or cooperative operation plan. On October 24, they have reached out to chiefs in the county and probably additional stakeholders and said, come. I expect that part of that meeting will be about a focus on what we call the 13 factors. But you can talk to the radio owners group and they can give you more detail. That is probably the most important event, the development of a willingness to talk to each other and manage or operate the systems in a unified or cooperative way. So part of this discussion today is just to build your understanding and your thinking around what might happen. Okay. I'm going to go through a little historical framework here first. Here. All right, 2011. And here, look at it with you. 2011, if you might remember this document, this is the first document. This agency is now a public development authority, a public corporation, but its predecessor was an interlocal agency. This was that document that created it. I, among many others, were part of the folks that helped develop the interlocal agency and the governing structure that exists now. The original folks, as you can see, were Pierce County, Tacoma, Lakewood, West Pierce, and then Puyallup and Fife joined a number of years later. Okay, all of us that were around in 2011 remember this. This is the Proposition 2011 for the Emergency Communications Sales Tax. It went out to the public for approval. And at that time, the state law said that it could go up to 0.1% of 0.1/10%. I'm saying that duplicate. 0.1.
1/10 of one.
Thanks, just like Janet said. The state law now doubles that, so it's 2/10. So in theory, it could go up to 2/10. But it was for emergency communications and facilities and approved by a very large margin, 10 points. In local government, 10 points is pretty big. So the money starts to come. Guess who that is? Everybody remember that? That's a much younger guy. Andrew Neiditz, if you see him now, has, shall we say, much more Santa Claus style hair. But he's up here because Andrew got this building built. This room is named after Andrew, the Neiditz room. So a very key player in this whole effort. Just if you think of it in the very short term of the history, Andrew got the building built. Next big event is a number of years later, and that's 2019. That's when Tacoma creates the PDA, Public Development Authority. Just think of it as a public corporation for this purpose, and we are now that PDA, that Public Development Authority Corporation. 2019, the facility bond for this building was sent out to the public. Of course, eventually it passes. The actual project cost ended up being $59 million, but the bond amount was $65 million. It also applied to the 35th Street Backup Center. Oops, went too far. And then after that, once this building gets built, the first operational director was hired, Deborah Grady. The easiest way to think about Debbie's term here was Debbie got the operations of the facility up and running. And imagine when she started in the toughest circumstances possible. COVID pops down and you're supposed to populate this building with a bunch of in proximity people. And she started out that way. So much applause to Debbie to actually getting this facility up and running for the people aspects, the operations, starting out in tough circumstances, and that was COVID. Okay, so grand opening occurs 2021. Almost seems like this building has been around longer than that, but it hasn't. About 75,000 square foot building, and its budget was about a $59 million budget. If you've never had the opportunity to tour with Mark Mears, who is one of the key architects of this building, you should do it. It's a very fancy building. The fun stuff he tells me is, hey, Kevin, I took the glass out and tested it. I shot it with 223 and 308. And guess what? The Lexan glass held up. So if anybody shoots at us from the street, we might have a chance. So this is a very well built, state of the art, modern building. Okay.
Arnold Schwarzenegger building.
Yes, it is. Okay, and so the last big event that occurred in recent history was that the program office, which was lodged in Pierce County, was transferred to this agency. The program office is the interface between the state 911 office and each county. And each county has a program office, and because the functionalities exist over here, the program office was transferred. This is a key component. This line. So at the time of the transfer, because Pierce County had built its budget around those dollars for 2 years, 22 and 23, 1.3-ish million was transferred or left in Pierce County's coffers. Okay, so that history sets the basic framework for where we are today. I also wanted to just give you the quick view of when did South Sound start receiving either the sales tax dollars or the E911 excise tax. Here it is, 2012, the sales tax was remitted to South Sound 911. 20 cents of the 70 cents of the excise tax was remitted. During the transition of the program office, 75% of the accrued 911 dollars were also transferred. And then finally in 2023, the whole 70 cents that's allowable under the excise tax was transferred. Okay, so what does that look like? I know you've seen this before in budget, but I just want to remind people, the budget of this agency, we have no ability to generate our own revenue. We can't impose taxes. So all the revenue that comes into this building is transferred to us from the partner agencies, primarily from Pierce County, either as the 911 excise tax or the sales tax. And so as you can see, I want you folks to remember this more than anything. Our budget is about a $57 million budget. 24-ish million come in from the sales tax, 9.4-ish comes in from the excise tax, and then you make up the rest. So if anybody takes anything out, somebody's going to make up the rest. This is gap filler. So operating at a $57 million budget, in order to achieve that level of service, there's 40% allocation. That's a weird way of saying is you just pay the rest. You make up the gap. So anytime somebody pulls something out, somebody has to make up the gap. Okay. Oops, a little too far. Now, so what has the EC sales tax, the emergency communication sales tax, been spent on? And what we've done here is to show a bit more accuracy. All the way above the gray line is what's actually been spent. And then into the next 10 years till 2036, this is projected, but it's pretty solid. I'm going to show you one slide first. Go here. Okay, this is the EC sales tax revenue. You can see it passes in 2011 and then starts to generate revenue in 2012, about midway through. And then it slowly starts to increase, and there's various factors for this. You can see once we kind of get to the COVID years, clearly there's an increase because people are using or buying from home much more frequently. But then in addition, if we all remember, online sales initially back in the early days were free of tax. Eventually that's turned off, they are now taxed. And so the tax man is slowly capturing that activity. And now we're peaking at about, or plateauing maybe more accurately, at about 24 million a year in EC sales tax revenue. Now, if any of you have magical crystal balls and could look into the future and say the economy is going to increase or the economy is going to decrease, then we could project about whether or not that 24 is going to stay solid into the future. But right now, we're just basing our projections off of that. We think we plateaued at about 24 million in EC sales tax, given our Pierce County economic activity at this point. That could change, though. We all know that who build budgets on sales tax. Okay, so headed back a little bit. So that's how that money has been spent over the years. These are sort of very broad accounting categories, but I'll give you a sense of how that money has been spent by listing out. So early on, where you see bonds up here, these were the two big bond measures in 2012 and 2013. You have the 2012 bond measure for 18 million. That was the 700 radio system, including mobiles and everything else. And following year in 2013, that's the 800 system bond that went out, 32 million, everything included in that. And I'm just going to rapid fire down because this is more detail. Debt service, $5 million, 800 megahertz subsystem for Puyallup. So Puyallup's catching up to the two initial expenditures at 3 million. Radios for Puyallup, Yawning Lake and Sumner, 1.2 million. VH overlay, 4.4 million. On we go. So what we've done, this much has been spent through here. And then if you simply extrapolate into the future, saying that's a huge number, but it's really just us showing our average operations of about 18 million per year for the next 10 years. The costs that we can project out into the future show, has this income stream largely been committed? That's the question that I'm asking you. Let me flip to my next slide. So if you look at how that emergency communication sales tax extends out into the future, the question that we really should be asking ourselves, has that income stream, that 1/10 of 1% that was passed in 2011, has that largely been tapped out? Has that largely been committed? Is there really is there financial power left in that? I don't know. My rough analysis shows maybe 4 to 5 million left by the time you get to 2036. So then the question is, what do we do? Now, I've already made this point. The state law has changed now, so the sales tax can be doubled to 2/10 of 1%. And it certainly could be renewed at the 1/10 of 1% as well. Okay. I've showed you this already just so you can see the actual revenue stream. And then if you kind of put those various factors together, this is not designed for an outcome today. It's designed just to help you think about it right now. I'm going to kind of walk you through what we might call a decision tree or a decision matrix. And the point of all of that is we're going to come to this October 24 meeting, and there are going to be discussions thereafter. The October 24 meeting will absolutely inform some of your thinking. But this is kind of the style of thinking that we need to be doing here. So it's slightly hidden above, but it says single system. You could also say in this very gray box above, do you have a shared vision? You could also substitute that question in. Is there a shared vision about a single system? Is there a shared vision about whatever outcome you want? If there is, yes, then do you want to do something now or later? If you do something now, you could literally just spend the 9 million you have in reserves on a discrete project. You'd have to choose the project and then of course go through the process of something like a design bid build. If you want something now, you could also go out to the taxpayers and say, hey, will you give us more money? That's a possibility. And if that passed, you probably could get pretty close to some massive variation on a single system if that was the desired outcome, pardon me. Don't want to do anything now? You can wait till later, 2036, when this EC sales tax is going to expire. And at that time, you could either seek renewal at the existing level, you could increase it. If it passed, you probably could consider seriously some large single system variation, design bid build. If it failed, then you're back sort of to the, well, what do we do with our $9 million? And if you wanted to spend it, you could choose a project and build it. If you don't, and for whatever reason, now is not the time, it's just not a priority for us, we don't want to support it, you don't have a shared vision, or you're not interested in something variation along a single system, then you could go immediately to disbursement. I'm not suggesting that you pursue any of these actions today or make a decision. This is a study session. It's not an action session. It's here for you to begin to, not only the new folks, but the folks that have been around a long time, begin to talk and come up with, outcomes that you desire. But I think most importantly, again, I keep saying this, October 24 meeting will inform this entire discussion. So at least wait till December 10 before you decide on any sort of action. Okay, let me make sure I've covered my slides. Okay, all right, covered the slides. Now I'm not going to consume any more time in my presentation. What we really wanted to do was just open up, have a pure classic policy discussion. What I see in the time and time again, and this is sort of on behalf of elected officials get to hear a lot from administrative folks, and we provide you with packets, and we send you to committee meetings and so forth. And then I wondered to myself, when do my policymakers ever get to talk? And so this literally what this session is about. We're not fully informed yet. Not everybody knows all the information. Not everybody's wrestled with the issues yet, but I think we need to start because some important stuff's going to come up. Not only do we have an ability to talk again, Tacoma and Pierce County and Puyallup, super important. That's a key factor. But we've got a lot of new people, a lot of fresh perspectives, and we're coming up to probably some important decision points in this whole effort. So I'm going to turn back over to the chair and vice chair, and I would love for you to just have a classic policy discussion.
The next item on the agenda is the radio owners group message. Do we have?
Yeah.
that?
Yeah, so let's see. Where's John? John, did you folks want to, or anybody from the radio owners group beyond the sort of announcement that I've made for October 24, do you want to add anything to that? Or Aurel?
So the radio owners group has met 5 times since I started 6 months ago. And so it's been a priority for us. And just as a reminder, the 3 radio owners are Pierce County, Tacoma, and Puyallup. And a lot of our work has been to re-establish a really great coordination, collaboration between the 3 systems to be able to talk about really kind of where are we and what's next. And a lot has happened. I hear the Executive Director Yamamoto talk about history and a lot of things that have happened in the past, and that there's a lot of fresh perspective and new people here. And I think that our discussion as 3 radio system owners really allows us to do that, is to make sure that we don't have those rocks in our backpack and that we're looking backward, but we're looking forward as 3 system owners together. And so I just wanted to share that with you, that I'm really happy with the partnership and the collaboration that we've had as the 3 owners. So I'm excited for this discussion on the 24th that I think will help inform that discussion and bring in both. We're going to talk a little bit about history, but we're really going to talk about moving forward and what we need for the residents of Pierce County, and to make sure that we are providing the best in public safety communications for everybody. So I just wanted to say, I think on behalf of the 3 system owners, that we're looking forward to the 24th and to that discussion.
I just want to say that I'm also looking forward to you all having that meeting, and I appreciate just having the open, frank discussion, not only between the radio owners, but with our agencies, because obviously this is what they think about every day. So just having that open discussion and allowing them the opportunity to express their ideas, options. I just think that that's going to be very productive, and that will inform the rest of us, so that we can be helpful in supporting the best solutions. Thanks for doing that.
Absolutely.
So Aurel, it's
still want
October 24, what time and where?
1 to 3 p.m. and it's here.
You should move slightly over.
Oh.
You have a green dot in your head. Now you're great now. Yeah.
Wait. Who has their sight on me? 1 to 3 p.m. here at Southside 911. And I think we're going to try to find a virtual option available to be able to connect. We know it's harder when it's virtual, so everyone is welcome to attend in person. And the radio system owners are meeting this afternoon to kind of work through that facilitation process. So, and I do want to yield time to any of the other system owners who might want to speak as well.
Gee, okay, and let's see, I don't see, is Daniel lurking somewhere? Okay, I don't see him. All right, nonetheless, folks are invited. I think that'll be a super important meeting. Next, we have just a segment or a component for PSCOC. If the leaders or want to speak to that, we also had a stakeholder component, and I think Chief Doan wanted to speak as well. Chief, you want to take yeah, go for it.
Thank you so much. I'm Dennis Stone, the Gig Harbor Fire Chief. I want to thank Director Yamamoto and the members of the board for the opportunity to speak today. I'm loosely representing the 700 megahertz units or users. I also want to acknowledge DEM Director Raul Saleh for her collaborative approach. She was handed a problem and she's doing her best to solve it. We do appreciate our working relationship. She's doing a great job, and we do support her. The 700 users are police and fire agencies from Gig Harbor, Buckley, Graham, Fircrest, Ording, Roy, Eatonville, the Key Peninsula, Ashford, Elby, and the Pierce County Sheriffs are all in the 700 of the county system. I'm fairly new to Pierce County. I spent 30 years with the Boise Fire Department, 30 years as the chief of Boise, which is an 18-station fire department in the capital city in Ada County. And the system I came from was completely consolidated. Everything from station alerting to radios to MDTs to the radio infrastructure to dispatching were all consolidated. It wasn't perfect, but I know it can be done. Coming here, I was quite surprised at how fractured and frankly dysfunctional. It's not a system. And we as public safety officers, we are suffering. Specifically, the billing disparity. Over the last several years, the 700 users have increased dramatically. Just in Gig Harbor, we went from 2023, a bill of $82,000 went up 145% to $203,000 in 2024. For Gig Harbor Fire, we have 155 radio subscribers. That equals $107 per unit per month compared to the 800 that pay $42 per month in the 800 system. The escalating and inconsistent costs are completely unsustainable for us. We're small agencies and we need some equity and we need some help. Last week, the 700 users got together to stack hands so that we would all be on the same page, and we made a few agreements. First, as 700 users, we will not sign the agreement, the systems access and use agreement distributed by Pierce County. We also agreed that we will only pay the $42 per month in 2025, aligning our payment with the 800 users, and we're not going to pay the 107 that we have been billed. We support Director Saleh in her request for a $1.5 million gap, whether it's the county or here in that funding. And we just want a reliable, coordinated, effective service. I know, as you said, this has persisted for years across multiple administrations and systems. The user fee dispute is a symptom of a much larger problem. And you're correct. The elected officials in this room did not cause that. We understand that. But you're the only ones that can fix it. We can't, as police and fire chiefs, fix this. We don't have the authority. We're here to be part of this solution, but we cannot continue with the rising costs of 145% year over year. We're small agencies and we just can't. We can't continue then. We need your help. I'll stand for any questions. Thank you for your time.
And I'll go to the executive. I'm sorry.
I just wanted to be able to just clarify very quickly. Chief Doan, you're welcome to stay up here if you'd like. Just to clarify what Chief Doan is experiencing and why, so that it's a little bit clear. Pierce County's rates have actually gone down. So it's not a matter of an escalating cost because the cost of our radio system is increasing or because something has changed in our technology or in the service that we're providing or anything else. The reason why users have experienced an increase in cost is that as long as the excise tax and the 1/10 of 1% tax was available to Pierce County, we were able to use about $1.35 million per year to offset the rates for the 700 users. And so that took the bill down. Southzone 911 had actually asked that it go to $31.50. And so for many years, it was at $30 and then $31.50 because of those offsets. Those offsets were available to us all the way until, as Executive Director Yamamoto said, once Pierce County passed through all of the 1/10 of 1% to Southzone 911, there was a 2-year proviso that allowed that $1.35 million to continue to be available to us to be able to offset those rates. After that 2-year proviso ended, then it was incumbent upon Pierce County to be able to come to Southzone 911 and ask for ongoing support to offset our radio rates. When we were unsuccessful in that request, back in 2024, the rates were then adjusted. In 2023, the rates were adjusted and full freight had to be passed through to each user. So all along we had this offset and then that spigot was turned off. And when that happened, there is no magic pot of money for me to be able to then continue to offset radio rates. And so even though our rates, we've been able to scrub and get as lean as possible, I don't have that offset amount. So therefore, Chief Doan's rates went from about $40 a month to $107 per month. So going forward, that's our challenge. That's my challenge, is that I don't have an ability to offset that. And so I recognize the challenge because if Southzone 911 were to continue that offset, there's a perceived inequity because Tacoma is not requesting that offset. And to be clear, we are two different systems. So ours is mountainous. Ours is very diverse. We have to cover an entire 1,400 square miles. We service largely smaller jurisdictions besides Pierce County. And so our system is much different than Tacoma's or Puyallup. That it's very, very tight. It's a very urban environment. So we do have two different systems. So to do an apples to oranges comparison, yeah, there is a cost to running those systems. Those are different systems. And if, let's say, we were to bring it all together into one, Tacoma would end up paying more. We'd pay less. So somebody's going to lose, in the end, I guess. And so when we have that $1.5 million injection, approximately, it does bring those rates down for us to be able to pass through the same amount that Chief Doan or other users had traditionally been used to. So I just wanted to share that perspective with everybody because I was able to share this information with the PSCOC several months ago when I came and asked for the funding and was unsuccessful. I was able to share this information with the 700 users at a meeting last week, but I've never actually been able to address the board with that similar information. So I appreciate the ability to just be able to share that with you.
And from our perspective too, everything she says is correct. Users from the county system have moved to the 800 system because of geography. They're in the I-5 corridor, West Pierce, and East Pierce, and Central Pierce. But Gig Harbor and Key Penn and Ashford Elby, we don't have that opportunity. We can't move to it. And so our rates continue to go up, whatever the reason is, whether it's a subsidy, we're feeling it and we can't. We're small agencies that cannot afford this 145% increase. And executive director, her budget's going to be $1.5 million short because we're not going to pay the amount. So it's either got to come from the county budget or somewhere else. I don't know where, but we're stuck in the middle and we have stacked hands as 700 users that we're going to pay the $42. We're going to pay our fair share, but our taxpayers are the same as everybody else, and that's all we're going to pay. And her budget's going to be $1.5 million short.
Executive Mello,
I was going to ask, thank you, Chief Doan.
I was gonna ask Arel to do what she just did, so thank you for reading my mind. And help educate more of us about the difference between the system. The 700 system there's mountains involved, unlike the Tacoma system and the Puyallup system, and there's more infrastructure to upkeep in a way bigger geography, in different terrain. It's just different. So there's different costs involved with maintaining the 700 system. So I think it's a good education for all of us. Certainly was a good education for me. And you know, with all due respect to my friend Chief Doan, I wish I could choose to pay bills at my discretion. When a bill came to me, I wish I could say, no, I don't like that AT&T bill. I'm gonna pay half that. With all due respect, like that's what we're facing as a service provider, and on how we pay those bills.
I'm sure. What is?
We have some,
It's either-
just on the agenda, there's additional slot, and I wanted to make sure that we don't skip over this for stakeholders and PSCOC. So if any folks from PSCOC wanted to have some mic time, you're welcome to do that. Not quite PSCOC. Okay.
Yeah, for Fire Chiefs Association.
We have too many chairs. Vice Chair McGelly gets first.
I'm giving, let these guys have their say. I think that's the best way to do it.
Morning, everyone. John Parkinson, Fire Chief of East Pierce Fire and Rescue, and also President of Pierce County Fire Chiefs Association. I'll just give you what our stance is as the Fire Chiefs Association, so you kind of hear it from our side. I think LE is largely in the same camp, but we had this discussion back in April. And one of the things that the fire chiefs did back in 2024 and prior to that was that we stacked hands and said, hey, we're all on board with a single system. In the last year, we walked away from the word single system, and I'll explain what that means. But in short, we realized that single system means something different to everybody. And so we said, well, what are our actual desired outcomes? They fell into three buckets. So one is interoperability, so seamless coverage across the county, right? We want to be able to travel anywhere in the county, perfect state, and be able to click on a radio and have it work and talk to the person at the other end. So that's number one, interoperability. Number two, embracing emerging technologies. So the system that we have is obviously probably not the right system for the future, whether that's embracing LTE, satellite, whatever. I think Central Pierce, Chief Morrow has done a good job of testing some different options that work within the current system. So that's number two, technology. And then number three, really piggybacking on what Chief Doan talked about, was a system that addresses cost disparities across users. I'm on the Puyallup system. And for operations for my district work great. My costs, I have no complaints on, but that's not the same for the entire county. And so as the Fire Chiefs Association, it's trying to address all three of those things. I will also step aside here for a second and I spent 21 years working for Eastside Fire and Rescue in King County. Chief Holman's back there. So back in 2015, they passed the PSERN, Puget Sound Emergency Radio Network project to build out their system. I'm not suggesting that same thing. What I am saying is, everybody in here has done public works projects. If we do something today, I feel like we'd be lucky if a decade from now, it was all built out, whatever that is. I know in King County, it passed in 2015. I feel like it was about 2023-ish. Looking at Bob for like a head nod here. It took that many years to build out the system to really get it moved over. So, if we're talking about waiting till 2036, you're talking about a solution in the 2040s or something like that. I don't, hoping I'm still around then. I feel like I will be, but anyway, that's my take, is that, delaying a decision now, you're not just delaying it now. It's going to take a long time, even if a decision is made, in the next year. So that's all I have. Any questions? Happy to answer. Brad Scott, did I sort of say that right?
I'm kind of fortunate, Brad Markey, Sumner Police Department, representing Pierce County Police Chiefs. So I was a deputy chief in 2011 when this all kind of converted. We used to run our own dispatch center. That was kind of the way it worked back then. Everybody had their own dispatch center, and then built into this idea, this concept of a single unified public safety communications network and center. But, so I've been on, made chief in 2012, so I've kind of been somehow related, involved in the whole process, but, the Pierce County Police Chiefs, we also have users in the 700, the 800, the cost disparity is obviously very near and dear to 700 users. So that's an issue, but we've been told kind of the whole time that the two systems with an ISA gateway is never intended to be a long-term solution. So it was a priority early on. There's been a number of, see Kevin Kearns here, there's been a number of study groups over the years that have told us, this unified single system. And then the question shifted to, what does that look like? Ownership, governance. Hopefully there's some economy of scales to bring down the cost, or at least share the cost more equitably across the single system. I think there's still an interest in that. But really the question has become, at what cost and what's that going to look like John said. Are there other system engineering processes that can fix some of Kevin mentioned the 13 factors or priority items that we all as a group, police, fire, identified are issues with the two disparate systems, right? Whether it's hitting an EMER button and it doesn't work on consoles, or roaming from one area to another in mutual aid, not having coverage. So there was a number of issues that were identified. And I think those are still the priority, because John says we want a reliable radio system for the lieutenant on the fire truck, or my officer working the street. They don't care about ownership. They don't care about politics. They don't care about, the ins and outs and the nitty gritty of it. But what they do care about is having a radio that always works. And so for police chiefs, we got a couple of things. When we talked many years ago, before we actually engaged Kevin and his group to kind of shepherd what does this single system look like, and engage Motorola. The priorities were with the emergency communication sales tax were, one, let's use that to fix what's wrong and engineer a single system. If that's not feasible for whatever reason, the second preference was really to use the sales tax funds to replace subscriber radios. Many of us are still operating on the initial 2013 radios at those bonds, those since retired, but the radios, this is still a 2013 radio that was purchased from from that bond. So a lot of our departments are also facing subscriber radio upgrades. So those are kind of where we're at. I think it's going to be very beneficial to revisit this. It's been, I think, maybe over a year since the steering group met on the single system, and the conversations that went as far as it could go. And it shifted to the owners to work on the other issues such as ownership, governance, maintenance, et cetera. So I think it'll be very beneficial to meet on the 24th. We've got new leadership in some of our largest agencies, as far as the sheriffs and Tacoma and stuff, Fife. So we need to really have those candid conversations. Where are our needs? Where are we sitting? And then ultimately at the end of the day too, it's going to be cost, right? If the engineering to a system would be 17 million, there's a surplus of 9, how do we bridge that gap? So that's kind of where we're at. Thank you all very much for your role at South Summit. Any questions?
Well, Chief, the PSCOC has not met since this meeting was scheduled, correct?
Yep.
So we don't have a official PSCOC position. All right. That's board member policy discussion. Board member Branster.
Well, I appreciate the comments that we've just heard, and a couple of the most significant ones reflect that on a policy level, if we're going to have discussions and talk about single system, that we really need to define what we mean when we say that. Because the elements of problems are, for some agencies, and the biggest problem is disparate costs between the fragmented systems or collection of systems that we have now. For others, it's that there are the two systems with a gateway, that there are still technology issues that don't work, that for first responders on the street see as potentially at some point in time being risky to them to be able to go and do that. So, and then after you define single system, then you need to sort of define the priority of the outcomes that a single system would get to you. I mean, is our priority to first fix the financial disparity between users? Or is our priority to fix the technical system with a public works type project to be able to go and do that? The session that we're having now is during the times that I have been on the board, the fourth such session of this sort, where we've gotten together to discuss the radio systems and the relationship between radio systems. And I think that the chiefs have accurately talked about that it has been a question of what's technologically doable that is better than what we have. And then the other question has always been, if you invest a significant amount of money into creating a system that looks different, the governance issue has been there. And I will tell you that South Sound number one has never fully come to a full consensus on to what extent do we want to be the owner and operator of the system, as opposed to right now, we are a user just like all the agencies. So I think that that's those are policy questions that we need to address, and then resolving them will then lead to some understanding of costs that goes into what do we do about moving forward with renewing or increasing sales tax revenue or some other sorts of revenue to be able to go and do that. And whether or not in a shorter term, while a policy initiative takes hold and begins to go, as to what role can our radio reserve play in easing the transition in terms of costs to folks to be able to go and do that, as opposed to some other options about what to do with that reserve, which is the one slide we saw before was hang on to it until we actually got a project, or make a one-time dispersal of it, and then it's whatever the limited impact that has one time, and then a year later, if we haven't fixed something to do that. So so I think the policy discussions need to start with, what do we mean when we say single system, and which components of a single system do we want to prioritize if you can't do everything that's going on? From where I am in Lakewood, where we have a police department and we're serviced by West Pearson being able to go and do that. And we have the benefit of being in the lower cost range of the system, that I do not hear from the leadership in my police department significant operability issues, but I do hear the occasional operability issues, and so I don't know if those are more frequent in some of the more remote areas to be able to go and do that. And I would But that would be something that I would ask our group of chiefs and folks, and that I would ask my chief. It's just, from the policy priorities towards a single system. Is it technology? Is it that, or as South Sound 911 has discussed in past years, where does the need to replace the 2013 radios that were provided to all the agencies that had a significant impact on interoperability to prevent that from getting back to that being disparate? I don't have my own definition of single systems to propose, but I would certainly be interested in hearing others' views and think that is central to us making a policy decision. Because single system is a 10,000 level or higher term that is not helpful in describing a solution.
So I think part of the challenge here is that there were the 13 items. I don't know what the term you guys were using, but 13, at one point there was a group put together and chiefs, I'm looking at my chief because he can give me the look. There were 13 items that the chiefs identified in what they would want to see in a single system. But they have not had the meeting that's taking place next week to determine whether or not those, whether, we don't know whether those 13 items are still on the table, or that was a long time ago that meeting occurred. So are those items that were identified, are they still necessary for a single system? If they are not, are there items on that list that the funding can be used for? I mean, is there a tower, I'm making up words because I don't know what to, whatever, is there a component of that the 9 million would help address? But until we've heard from the chiefs as far as what out of that list of 13 items, these are no longer necessary. We think this is a better option. I'm not sure how we make a decision on this 9 million. Because we are kind of have that cart before the horse here. Carrie?
I have a few questions. I got to sit with Chief Parkinson and our Chief Barry for Bonnie Lake last night and asked them kind of some questions because I'm trying to wrap my head around the differences between 700 and 800 users. So what is the reason 700 users can't move to an 800 system? Like, is their systems completely different? Are their radios different? What is that?
Physical proximity.
Outside of the coverage
Yeah.
areas.
Yeah, they're just too far away from the transmission antenna stuff. So they're in the rural, think of it, they're in the Puget Sound and they're in the mountains. And the 800 system is really just built around the urban areas.
So
Not even an option for them.
very good. Aren't you, your Sumner, are you guys 700 still? Huh?
Yeah, we're part of the PL, we're 800, so.
So you're 800. Okay, okay. I thought I saw somewhere that you guys were 700 and I was like, why are you guys 700? Okay, so then another question, listening to the radio owner, I'm assuming that's the Pierce County person. If South Sound 911, am I hearing that correct? That South Sound 911 has been offsetting the cost of Pierce County's radio systems by 1.5 million?
During the transition, when the program office was moved over, and I put up that document, there were two payments about 1.3 for each of the year 22, 23, I think there were. And that's simply because Pierce County had built its budget around those dollars. But after that, the agreement said there's no more. But it does, as RL says, exactly leave a revenue hole where there had been revenue before. So that's why they talk about 1.5 million. They used to have it, but once the program office got transferred over here, that revenue wasn't available any longer.
I guess then for the radio owners, my question would be is, how do you make this more equitable for 700 and 800 users so that the 700 users are having to eat that cost. And then I guess if 700 users aren't gonna wanna pay that full cost, then Pierce County is gonna be stuck with a budget deficit. And how do we figure that out? And so just kind of putting that out there, like, how do you guys figure that out? And then if we became one single system, like, Chief Parkinson brought up the PCERN to me last night. My husband was Seattle Fire. So PCERN, by the time he retired, was not up and running yet. So, this is a whole new world up there. So that would be amazing down here if Pierce County had something similar. Just if you go on their website, you look it up, it's a really cool system. Like, they've done a great job at putting all this together and making it work for the entirety of the county. But would that require like owners to transfer their towers and all of their equipment and all that stuff into one ownership it doesn't even have to be South Sound 911. It could be something like PCERN, where it's a completely separate organization that owns and operates.
Councilmember Huber, you're getting the nodding heads of the Motorola group behind you, so you're right on it. I want to explain this though, again, why does the 700 system cost more? I think Arel has said this before, but most fundamentally, it's just that it covers a much larger area and has a much smaller population that it serves. So it's a tiny density that serves, that has to pay for a system that covers a lot of area. And if you look at like a Tacoma, Puyallup kind of area, that's where all the density is. And so the system only has to cover that area and a lot of people to pay for it. So that's fundamentally the difference. Just much more density in the 800 system, where there's a lot more users that can spread the cost out. If you merge the systems, that probably means 800 is pay higher. And let me separate these two issues as well. If you make a bigger system, it will not be cheaper. It will be more expensive. Some variation on a single system adds cost to the system. So making cheaper and more system will not exist in the same universe. So we talk about two things. One is let's maybe eliminate disparity in cost for access to costs. That's a different issue from, do we want more coverage? Do we want more higher level of service?
So on the.
Wonderful discussion. Love it.
Mike will remember this. The original $1 million subsidy to buy down the rates was to offset it, to get the system owners to have a conversation about a single system. It was supposed to be 1 year. And then it kind of just kept going, and it did not get to that point. So when South Sound originally agreed to buy down that rate, it was with the hope of getting to the single system. It got to a point where right before we switched, the PSCOC was going to recommend that we could discontinue that because that subsidy was not accomplishing, it just turned into a subsidy and an expectation. It was not driving the conversation. And that was the whole intent when we started that initial subsidy. And then during the budget process, the former executive, I call you an executive director. I guess you're that too, but you're not Executive Mello. We had a conversation about transitioning this over, and it was that one was a 1 year deal. And I made that deal with him. And I spoke with the previous chair, and he was the vice chair. And I said, we didn't agree to the 2 years. And it was, I have emails that say that, yes, we know, but they have a biennial budget. And so we ultimately agreed to do that second year because, we were trying to be good partners. We want to figure that out. But that's how the history of this is a little bit more complex with this subsidy and trying to keep the rates uniform because it didn't accomplish what we wanted it to accomplish. Not saying that's where we're going, but that's the history of where we've been.
I've been around since the inception. One of the things is the reason why the cost goes up for 700 is people keep on moving from the 700 to the 800. And my question has always been to the owners, who owns the towers? Because if the problem is that they don't have enough towers out to LB Ashford area and keep Peninsula. What would it take? How many towers would it take that we'd have to build to have a unified system? I've never gotten an answer to that. And I think the last time I saw what tower cost for all the implements on it is between 1 to 1.2 million, Alex. So if you only need 4 towers to cover that area, you'd be in sync. And of course, the 800, Arel, I think I may be off, but the 800 is focused in on I-5 corridor. That's why we'd have to build the towers out at LB Ashford, get one out at Key Pen. They were actually talking about putting one in Gig Harbor, and they ended up putting it out at, I think, Anderson Island. So if that tower would have been closer, of course, higher, whatever density, those are the discussions I want to see. We've been dancing this thing. I brought it up 4 years ago. I said, you know, everybody should have a dance card here because all you got to do is ask somebody and they'll dance you for an hour and then you don't get it. I like the idea they're having the meeting on the 24th. I think that'll bring everybody together to come up to where we are. The 13 issues, we all know we come up with a wish list, and it would have been nice to have the people that you hand the wish list to start canceling out what we can't do. So I think with this study session, we might have 1 or 2 new board members come on, but I think the idea is a lot of new board members now have an idea of what's been going on here. Because if we had, and I've never got the answer, is if we had more towers that were 800, would that all of a sudden bring everybody into the unified radio system under the 800? Because that's where most of the people are. That's why the money. But if it means that the 800 now is going to have to kick in more money to make the system work, I think that's the discussion that needs to happen between all the agencies and say, okay, this is what your bill is going to be. Are you willing to do that or are you not willing to do it? Because that's what makes the determination. It's like, why do we have 3 people own the system? And every time you ask 2 of the 3, do you want the system or not? They go, well, and they say no. Then you go, okay, so we're going to give it to this person, and everything goes crickets. So I think that's always been the problem on, you know, do we need a single owner? Do we need, we do need a single system, but do we need a single owner? Because it's being paid for now the way we're going. So I like the radio study session. I think it was good to have the information. Ariel, thank you very much for yours. I really did appreciate the analogy that you had too, because you hear it, but we don't hear it from the source. And Chief Doan, I understand your frustrations, and I'm not sure if we can address them, but it's good to hear the frustrations and see if we can move forward. That would be my opinion.
I want to thank all of these people for educating me every time I come here. And I think it's like a complicated thing. And every time you come, you learn a new little thing. And I really appreciate what you had to say, Pat, because every time I come here, I'm constantly like, if someone would draw me a map of where these areas are that don't have the good service, so I could understand what's missing. I don't have a picture of that, and I don't really understand. And I don't understand the need because I don't live out that far, and I'm not the person responding to the emergency and they can't get service. I want to understand that better. And I think hearing from areas that are further out and are struggling with that, it's really important to understand that. So I really think I need more information.
Yeah.
If we're going to come back on the 24th for our meeting, I want some information that has an idea for where are the holes in our system and who's going to pay for that? Is that something that South Sound 911 is supposed to pay for? And when we talk about equity, I appreciate that everyone thinks that it's so inexpensive to live in Tacoma because it's only $42 a month for your service. But we're paying for so many other things that it's more expensive to live in Tacoma than other places because it is a city. And so people are choosing to live out in the county and because it is cheaper. And I hear people I go doorbell who say to me, I'm going to move this place because it's a lot cheaper than here. So there are things that are always going to be more expensive. And this is one of those inequities. But I don't think there should be an inequity when we talk about public safety. Public safety and being able to get a hold of South Sound 911 should be equal. And so we need to figure out how we do that.
so it is equitable for everybody. So I really don't think it matters where you live. You should be able to call 911. The question about ownership, I think we're always afraid to say who should own this system. And I think your question and what you said about, do we need to have an owner? That's a good thing to ask too, because if we can all go to 800, does it matter if there's an owner to it? I mean, I guess that's a question that I have too. If we're putting in technology or something somewhere, it seems like South Sound 911 might be the decision. And before I never thought that. But now that I'm sitting here looking at how we're having a conversation that makes sense to have and we're moving forward on things, I don't feel so uncomfortable about that. I think we bring a lot of history to conversations of things that were in the past and our uneasiness. I want to say that I think we're moving past that. And I want to thank everyone for that. So I'm really looking forward to figuring out how we can do that and work together. So.
I just want to add on to that, especially for the South Side 911 system itself. We have residents of Tacoma that are going out to LB, that are going out to the rural areas to hike, and they need to be able to call 911 to get the response they need. So I really believe in trying to find a solution that works for all of us and being equitable in what that looks like, because there are people that come from other parts of the county that come into Tacoma. They need the support and help as well. So I think it's really important for us to kind of get a handle on this and make it work for all of us. And at the end of the day, it may actually end up costing Tacoma a little bit more. But that's where I need to know, okay, how do we, what does it cost for Tacoma to fill those gaps, right? But I know that there are going to be Tacoma residents also out there potentially that might need the services. So it's not a complete, I really believe in the equity and the subscriber costs, and I really feel for the 700 system users, because it could be just as easily anybody else in the county that could need the services because they're working out there or happen to be visiting or something like that. So just a thought out there. Thank you.
Appreciate the previous speakers and really appreciating this time to calmly learn together and be on the same page. Some have been doing this for longer than others, so it's a good use of time to get on the same page. Following up on what Councilmember Rumbaugh said, Kevin, is it possible, maybe you could lean on one of our teams, is it possible to create a visual like Councilmember Rumbaugh is talking about, maybe in time for the December session, a visual that could really visualize, for us visual learners, visualize geographically who uses the 700 system today, who uses the 800 system?
Mr. Executive, those exist. They were prepared by AdCom and they were presented. Councilmember Denson has copies.
I too appreciate a map. I'm like, I need to see this.
They exist. They were prepared by a consultant that we had for the big technical study session that occurred in June of 2022. So I'll produce them all to you. I'll deliver them all to you. They exist.
Is there a way to layer, not making it terribly complicated, but these elements that you're also educating us about, the factors that go into the cost, to just to very visually put in one place, not only who uses what system because of geography,
Yep.
but this point that you make is so important, that the 700 users spread the cost over fewer
Yes.
people. So there's fewer people to spread the cost to, so it's more expensive per unit. But just put that kind of information in one place.
Whoever wants to correct me, my understanding is that we have redundancy on towers in some places. 700 tower is right near an 800 tower, which does not create efficiencies because we have the two systems. So I don't know if that is something that can be, Chief, am I making that up? Okay, nobody else is giving me anything, so I'm just putting you on the spot. So we have, that is a concern, but then if the footprint is the 700 users, we don't want to lose the 700 towers that are out there. It seems like you need to add to that system. But I'm not
The equipment is on the tower, it's not the tower itself.
Go ahead, Joe.
Just a technical question on the 800, 700. Is it as easy as changing the band on the towers, the technology? Or is there actual core components that need to be switched over for like to go from 700 to 800? Or is it just changing the dial from 700 to 800?
Motorola, you're gonna have to give a one sentence quick answer. One sentence. Is it that easy or is it not?
No.
Okay, there you go.
Chief Morrow.
It's not changing the time.
Okay, okay.
Quick.
So
No.
I would just say,
Chief Morrow first.
It's okay, I can wait.
Go ahead. We wanna hear
Madam
from
Chair,
you, Chief.
thank you, members of the board. Just a couple quick comments. That is, as I'm listening to the conversation, first, thank you very much for having the policy discussion. I think it's super essential. I think one thing I just want to share with you, back to Executive Mello's question about who's writing on what system. There's a lot of assumptions being made in the room about, what I would call the firewall between the two systems. So the decisions that were made several years ago when we started this process are not really the decisions that should be made today. Since then, as Chief Parkinson and the other chiefs in the room have acknowledged, the technology has moved forward at a pace that is just unbelievable. And there's new solutions today that should honestly be explored. And I'm sharing this just as the fire chief that's representing the three organizations that kind of sit in the middle of this whole conversation. The reality is, Central Pierce had documented about 300 unique instances in about 180 locations within the I-5 core that you're referencing that we don't have radio coverage. But because of, some leadership that sit in this room and other organizations, when roaming got turned on as a pilot for our organizations, all of our radio issues resolved like that. At the same time, leveraging some additional emerging technology, our ability, actually, I live on KeyPen, and I can tell you, I talk in the 800 system from the very bottom of KeyPen without any difficulty whatsoever. I happen to be riding across a slightly different system, but because there's been a decision made for my organization that allows that to happen. So I think it's super important, let the radio owners, right, inform the policymakers about the structure that could exist in this county. If we want to keep calling it single system, great. If we want to call it combined system, great. If we want to make a policy decision about simply just allowing roaming across the two existing systems, great, whatever it is. And then the other thing I think that's really important, and this is not the position of the 15 elected officials that I am representing, so I just want to caution that there, but through this process over the last, 16 to 24 months, this organization should actually not even be on the 800 system. We should be on the county system. And I have done the research to understand, why did Central Pierce originally go to Tacoma and then with Puyallup, and how did Graham factor into that and all those different things? And this is not a position, but from a policy conversation in a way to balance the cost. If for some reason my board said, Dustin, as part of the policy discussion, shift almost 500 subscriber radios from this system to this system, I mean, that is going to change the cost factor like overnight, just like that. And I'm not saying that's the thing to do. I'm just trying to represent that the conversation about the mechanics of how the system works needs to be understood at a much greater depth as who's on 700, who's on 800. And also, I think there needs to be a conversation about the total subscribers that sit in the system. It's really a radio owner's policy position about shifting, right, the total subscriber count that sits on which system. Because I can tell you firsthand, 500 radios almost in my system that flawlessly talk now, finally, John, as the number one priority that the fire chiefs had. Can we please talk across our own county? It happens every single day for us now without difficulty. And when you roll in one more leg of technology, it brings to light your ability to talk literally not just in this county, in any county across any portion of Washington and beyond. So just please I very much appreciate the policy conversation. It's the right conversation to be having. I would just encourage you, make sure that you're cautious about the assumptions that are being made that are legacy assumptions. And make sure that the right conversation is being had about the technology, because it's very, very different than more towers next to each other, all those type of things. And again, I'm just speaking to the experience that we've had last 16, 24 months, not the policy position of the board I represent.
Are you gonna be at the meeting on the 24th?
I'm gonna do my very best, yes.
Okay, that's good.
Thank you for giving me just a minute.
So I don't know who can speak to this, but it sounds a little bit confusing to me. The meeting on the 24th is the system owners and the users. It is not the board, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Mike?
I think we've had a good discussion, done some educating of each other, okay? And particularly the chiefs providing some education to us. There's just one comment that I wanted to go back to and recognize that the ability of a citizen to communicate with South Sound 911 is not a function of the radio system. You know, we have made lots of enhancements in how members of the public throughout the county can get through to South Sound 911. And of course, they're not using the radio system to do that. And so we don't want to insert the continued enhancements that we're continually making in terms of how people in need can contact 911 with, and confuse that with the radio system. The radio system is a part of the response piece, but we're actually doing quite well with making sure that wherever you are in the county, unless you're in Mount Rainier National Park or something like that, but then you can get a hold of South Sound 911 and get the response started to be able to go and do that. And the comments about we need to be making policy decisions in light of current available technology or near-term future available technology is important rather than going back. I recall back in around 2021, maybe 2022, and we talked about the tower issue. Okay, about, well, first of all, there is the issue, as the Motorola folks say, that a tower is got to have stuff on it to be able to communicate, and it's different for the 700 and the 800 system, and the things that are on the 700 towers actually provide coverage to a bigger area than stuff that's on an 800 tower. Stuff on the 800 tower perhaps provides a different level of quality in a nearby area. But there was a map that predates, around 2020 that said if you wanted to convert the 700 area to 800, that you'd need 14 more towers to be able to go. And it wouldn't do it, and it wouldn't do everything after you converted everything to 800. So I think that getting an understanding and making a policy commitment that we're going to not be focused on trying to make the current technology fit together better, but take a look at the new technology changes is an element of our policy that we should adopt, and then entrust to the technical people who know how to evaluate those kind of technologies to help craft solutions.
Can I ask Chief Morrow one question?
I'm okay with it if he is.
Hey, could you explain if roaming, and I appreciate all the technology that you're doing, is roaming something that works in any type of weather, or like, so if there's a bad windstorm, it still works? And so like during emergencies, we don't have to worry about that. I mean, I guess my question is about redundancy, if that's something that's necessary in a system if you're using roaming.
Yeah, so it, I mean, I'm gonna try to.
Maybe I'm asking the wrong question, so
No, you're
just
not. It's
go
an
ahead.
excellent question. So there's Motorola staff here. There's a longtime veteran of the radio system sitting in the room that can explain much more of this better than I can. I'm gonna say it this way. They will say something probably slightly different. Roaming is simply an administrative choice between the radio system operators. And that was an enabled for our organization. So it has nothing to do with proximity to this or that or whether anything. You're literally telling the subscriber unit, you have authorization to participate on any tower, regardless of 700 or 800 tower or owner. It does come with challenging questions about capacity and system, degradation and backup and all these things. But it is not, it's an administrative function of the system that allows my radios to talk anywhere in the county. And then just the piece that I referenced about me being on Key Pen, I'm talking through LTE, your standard commercial cell phone carrier is what I'm talking through into the Tacoma radio system. That if RL makes a decision, could also be the way with which I talk to the county system. And that technology all exists today.
I want to add on the 700, we have been asking to do ES chat.
It's
And
the other
roaming,
chat.
and they won't allow us to do it.
And I don't understand. I mean, I can't speak to that. I don't know why some got turned on, some didn't, but it's not weather dependent. And may I just address one thing really quickly that you brought up? There actually is an explicit link between our community members accessing 911 into South Sound and the radio system. So like the technology that we're trying to advance that many of us have installed in our apparatus is more focused on LTE than LMR, which requires us to have strong cellular connectivity in the community. So like in my particular case up on Patterson Road, those community members literally do not have a way to call 911. CenturyLink no longer supports the service up there. Everybody that's digging a water line has pulled up the old copper lines. So by us advancing, either this district or this comm center or this policy position, by us advancing cellular commercially readily available technology up on Patterson Road, it does give the community member the ability now to call 911. And by the way, why my fire engines and medic units are up there where we do not have strong county radio system and have no 800, they have a very strong and viable way to talk to this community, to talk to this communication center and to the other companies because they're using the same tower that you and I would to call 911 to talk on the radio. So there is actually a really purposeful link between community 911 access and the build out or advancement or connection or roaming capability or plug that gets switched in around a community member calling 911 the radio system.
There's a lot going on. Okay, so any closing comments?
I guess I just have a question. I'm very excited about this meeting on the 24th, not that we're attending, but that it's happening. Will there be a report out for our December meeting so that we can hear some of the options or?
And maybe just to ask Chief Engel, because he's one of the radio owner group, I think the focus is going to be on the 13 factors. Is that? Okay. So, and that's the most key thing, that the 13 factors, we can say them or describe them different ways, but I think they're the outcomes that the police chiefs or the agencies want. And so they're going to re-examine them now that time has passed. I think one of the neat exercises that RL did in the radio owners group meeting was just to walk down through the 13 factors and go, are any of these necessarily actually related to a single system? And the conclusion was, of the 13, maybe 2 are related to a single system and the rest are not. So re-examining that through a different lens. But I still say the most important factor is that Tacoma, Pierce County, and Puyallup, as the owners of the radios, are talking to each other in a meaningful way now. That's the most important thing that's happened. So if that effort continues forward, let's support it and see where it goes. And then we can make decisions as we come into the new year based on the outcomes. So this conversation is just starting now. Part of the goal is to get people educated, get background, so that when we come to decision points after October 24 and thereafter, we can do that. And I've heard all of you talk about what is, say this different ways. Do we actually share a vision? I don't think we do now, but we have to go through some visioning in the first part of the year once new board members are seated and reestablish, reaffirm whatever that vision is, because that's the thing that allows us to accomplish something if enough of us agree. So that's simply what we're going through this process right now. So thank you very much for your attention and your participation today.
Before I ask for a motion, Pat, you're giving me a look. I can't tell if that means you're gonna ask a question or you're just, I deserve a funny look. Are you looking to speak?
I just think, that what needs to happen is we need to end this thing. Which way we go? Okay, but this thing's been kicked around long enough and it's time to get ended, and the important thing is not what's in this room, but the residents of the county. How are we gonna better serve them? That's part of the thing too. So, yeah.
Okay, no, good points. Okay. With that, entertain a motion to adjourn.
Madam Chair, move to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.